The street was quiet that night, the kind of quiet that made every small sound sharper, the echo of his boots on the pavement, the hum of a lone streetlight buzzing above, the rustle of a paper bag swinging at his side. Daniel had just finished his second job for the day, and every part of him ached. His shoulders were sore from lifting crates, his hands dry and calloused, and his mind heavy with worries he could never quite set down. Rent was due in a week, the electricity bill was already late, and Lily needed new shoes for school. He told himself that tomorrow he'd figure it out. Tonight, all he wanted was his old couch, a glass of water, and the soft sound of his daughter breathing in her sleep. But the night had other plans. As he cut across a side street near the luxury hotel where his company had hosted its gala, his steps slowed. At first he thought it was just another late-night reveler, but then he saw her, swaying on the uneven pavement, her heels clicking awkwardly, a purse clutched in one hand like it was her lifeline. Her head dipped forward, then snapped up, and he could hear the faint, slurred hum of her voice. She was muttering to herself, or maybe trying to sing. The streetlight caught her face, and his chest tightened with disbelief. Claire Donovan. There was no mistaking her. He had seen her in board meetings, standing tall in tailored suits, her voice commanding silence with a single word. She was power, discipline, and distance wrapped in elegance. And now, at nearly 1 in the morning, she was staggering like a lost child, her hair falling in waves over her face, her confidence replaced by fragility. Ms. Donovan. Daniel's voice came out hesitant, unsure if speaking her name would break some unspoken rule. She turned, unsteady, her eyes glassy and struggling to focus. She squinted, pointing a finger at him, swaying as she tried to place him. Daniel. Logistics. Right. Yes, ma'am, it's me. He stepped closer, careful, like approaching a spooked horse. Let me help you. It's not safe to be out here alone. She let out a soft laugh that turned into a sigh, shaking her head. They're all liars, Daniel. All of them, smiling, nodding, waiting for me to fail. I needed air. Her words stumbled out, slurred but heavy with a truth she might never admit sober. Before he could answer, her heel caught on the broken edge of the sidewalk. She pitched forward with a gasp, and instinct took over. The grocery bag hit the ground as Daniel lunged, catching her before she hit the pavement. She collapsed against his chest, her perfume mingling with the sour burn of alcohol. Her head fell against his shoulder, her body trembling slightly. Easy, he murmured, steadying her. I've got you. She tried to straighten, muttering something incoherent, but her legs gave out again. He looked up and down the street. No cabs, no one else around, just him and the most powerful woman he knew, suddenly reduced to someone who couldn't even stand. For a long moment he hesitated. He wasn't supposed to be here, wasn't supposed to be part of her world outside the walls of Donovan Enterprises. But leaving her was unthinkable. With a quiet sigh, he half lifted her, guiding her toward his old truck parked around the corner. She leaned heavily on him, whispering things that made his chest ache. About being tired, about people only wanting her money, about how exhausting it was to always be strong. He didn't answer. He just listened, helping her into the passenger seat, buckling her in like she might fall without it. The drive back to her penthouse would have been the right thing, if he knew the address. But she was already fading, her head against the glass, and he couldn't risk driving aimlessly with her in that state. So he turned toward the only place he knew, home. His apartment was small, barely enough for him and Lily, but it was safe. He carried her up the stairs with more care than he thought he had left in his tired body. Inside, he laid her gently on the couch, tucking a blanket around her. He placed a glass of water and 2 aspirin on the coffee table, his hands lingering for a second as he watched her breathing steady. For the first time in years, she looked almost human to him, not the untouchable CEO, but a woman who had walls too high for anyone to climb. In the quiet of his kitchen, Daniel sat with his coffee, staring at the shadows on the floor. His daughter slept peacefully in the next room. His boss slept on his couch. And he wondered, with a nervous weight in his chest, what the morning would bring. The sunlight crept slowly into the room, slipping between the thin curtains and spilling across the couch where Claire stirred. Her head throbbed, her mouth was dry, and her throat felt raw. She groaned softly, pulling the blanket tighter around her shoulders. For a moment she kept her eyes closed, expecting the familiar silence of her penthouse, the crisp linen sheets, the soft hum of city traffic far below. But when she finally blinked her eyes open, none of that was there. The room was small, cozy in a way she wasn't used to. A worn rug covered the floor, mismatched furniture filled the space, and on the coffee table beside her was a glass of water with 2 aspirin waiting patiently. She blinked at them, her memory slow to catch up. Last night, the gala, too much champagne, the dizzying walk outside, and then, him, Daniel. She frowned, pressing her palm against her temple as the fragments began to form a clearer picture. From the other side of the room, she heard laughter. Not sharp, not calculated, but the light, bubbling laughter of a child. The sound pulled her attention toward the tiny kitchen, where Daniel stood in an apron that looked too small for him, flipping pancakes on a scratched skillet. A little girl with dark curls and big curious eyes sat at the table, her chin propped in her hands as she giggled at something her father had said. The smell of syrup and coffee filled the air, mingling with the warm hum of morning. Claire pushed herself up slowly, the blanket slipping off her shoulders. Her presence didn't go unnoticed for long. Daniel turned at the sound of movement, spatula in hand, his eyes widening when he saw her awake. "Ms. Donovan," he said quickly, as if he had to explain himself before she even asked. "You're safe. I found you outside the hotel last night. You weren't in good shape, so I brought you here. I didn't know your address. I'm sorry. Nothing happened. I just thought it was better than leaving you out there." His words came out rushed, his posture stiff, like a man bracing for impact. Before she could answer, the little girl piped up with a smile that could disarm anyone. "Daddy saved you. He carried you in and gave you my blanket. You were snoring." She giggled again, covering her mouth. Claire felt heat rise in her cheeks, though whether from embarrassment or something else she wasn't sure. She glanced at Daniel, who was clearly mortified, then back at the child, who looked at her with innocent curiosity. "Is this your daughter?" Claire asked softly, her voice still gravelly from the night before. Daniel nodded, setting the spatula aside. "This is Lily. Lily, this is my boss." Lily tilted her head. "You don't look like a boss. You look tired. Do you want pancakes?" For the first time in a very long time, Claire laughed. It was small, hesitant, but real. She lowered herself back onto the couch, her body still heavy but her chest lighter than she expected. "I suppose I could eat a pancake," she murmured, watching as Lily beamed with pride. Daniel served her a plate a few minutes later, still cautious, still unsure of how she might react once the haze of the night fully lifted. But Claire wasn't thinking about anger or embarrassment the way he expected. Instead, she found herself staring at the scene in front of her, the father who moved with quiet care, the child who adored him without hesitation, the warmth of a home that didn't shine with wealth but radiated something rare. She had spent years building her empire, years being untouchable. People respected her, feared her, envied her, but no one looked at her like Lily just had, with simple kindness untainted by ambition. No one had taken care of her the way Daniel had last night, with no agenda, no expectation. Just decency. When Daniel finally sat down across from her, still tense, still waiting for her judgment, she set her fork down and looked at him fully. "Thank you," she said, her voice steady now. "For last night, for not leaving me there. For treating me like a person, not a headline." He shrugged, his eyes dropping. "Anyone would have." She shook her head slowly. "No, not anyone. I've met enough people to know that." Silence stretched for a moment, broken only by Lily humming to herself as she poured too much syrup on her pancakes. Then, almost without thinking, Claire reached across the table and placed a hand lightly on Daniel's arm. The gesture startled him, but he didn't pull away. "I owe you," she said, her gaze unwavering. "More than just for last night. And starting today, things are going to be different. At work, for you." Daniel blinked, unsure what she meant, but Lily grinned, as if she already understood something the adults didn't. By the time Claire finally gathered her things and Daniel drove her back, the whispers had already started. Employees arriving early to the office saw their CEO step out of Daniel's beat-up truck. She didn't hide her smile when she thanked him in front of everyone. For a woman known for her icy distance, the sight was enough to send ripples through Donovan Enterprises. And for Daniel, still smelling faintly of syrup and coffee, the morning marked a change he hadn't seen coming, a shift that began not in the boardroom, but in the quiet warmth of his modest home.